The OpenAI training cluster is still ingesting your conversations right now, and the FTC can't stop it. In 2023, the Federal Trade Commission opened a formal investigation into OpenAI. They sent a 20-page subpoena. They wanted the training logs. They wanted to know what data was feeding the machine. OpenAI responded. The investigation closed, and the cluster is still running. OpenAI calls it infrastructure. The official story is clean. A partnership with Microsoft Azure, a new project called Stargate, $500 billion committed to American AI compute. The press releases name Texas, Arizona data center corridors being built for national competitiveness. The White House stood behind it. The optics were perfect. What OpenAI doesn't publish is the location of the specific clusters running active model training right now. The ones ingesting inference data, the ones logging what you type into ChatGPT, the ones feeding the next iteration of GPT. Those aren't in any press release. They aren't in any filing. And nobody outside of OpenAI's infrastructure team knows exactly where they are. Here's what the system actually does. Every conversation you have with ChatGPT generates what OpenAI's own privacy policy calls usage data. That data includes your prompts, your conversation history, your interaction patterns, the timestamps, and something the policy describes only as technical information. That information doesn't sit still. It moves. It touches servers. It gets evaluated against what OpenAI calls safety classifiers, automated systems that score your input in real time. And under OpenAI's current data retention policy, unless you've explicitly disabled training data sharing, that data is flagged for potential use in future model training. The key word is potential. It means the decision of whether your conversation contributes to a future model isn't made when you type it. It's made later, somewhere else. By a system running on infrastructure that isn't mapped in any public document. You opted into a mechanism. You don't know where it lives. The FTC didn't miss this. In July 2023, they issued a civil investigative demand, a formal legal instrument with subpoena power. They asked OpenAI for documents on training data sources, on data retention, on the specific process for including personal information in training sets. OpenAI handed over materials. The investigation officially closed without enforcement action. The FTC cited resource constraints. They cited jurisdictional limits on AI specifically. And they cited the fact that OpenAI's privacy policy technically discloses that your data may be used for training. Technically. The word "may" does a lot of work in that sentence. It's the word that kept the FTC from issuing a single fine, and it's the word that keeps the cluster running. Here's the mechanism nobody reported. OpenAI runs what's called a feedback loop pipeline, a continuous inference-to-training cycle where production traffic informs model evaluation. This isn't secret in the technical sense. It's described in research papers, but the legal architecture around it is what makes it untouchable. When you use ChatGPT, you're operating under a terms of service that grants OpenAI a broad license to use your inputs for improving services. That phrase, improving services, is not defined with a technical boundary. It doesn't specify which cluster processes your data. It doesn't specify which training run it feeds. It doesn't specify which geography that training run operates in. And that ambiguity is structural. It's not an oversight. The Stargate project involves compute deployed across Microsoft Azure nodes, CoreWeave data centers, a $12 billion contract signed in early 2025, and undisclosed third-party colocation facilities. Those colocation sites aren't subject to the same disclosure requirements as a named data center. They don't appear in public filings. They don't appear in regulatory submissions. When the FTC asked where training data goes after ingestion, OpenAI's legal response was accurate and completely uninformative. It goes to infrastructure used for model development. No coordinates, no facility names, no audit trail you can trace, and it's still running. What this means for you right now, if you've used ChatGPT in the last 12 months and haven't explicitly opted out of training data use, your conversations are somewhere in that pipeline. Not necessarily in a model. Not necessarily being read by a person, but logged, classified, scored, and held in a queue that feeds a system whose physical location is not publicly known. The company processing it is valued at over $300 billion. The regulator that investigated it closed the case. The government project built around it, Stargate, has the explicit backing of the executive branch. There is no appeal mechanism. There is no right to erasure that applies retroactively to training data already ingested. You can delete your chat history. The telemetry handshake already happened. The persistent identifier already synced. The prompt is already somewhere you can't reach. So here's the question nobody at OpenAI will answer. If the Stargate compute cluster is a national infrastructure project, built with the backing of the federal government, trained in part on conversations from 200 million users, who does that data belong to? You typed it. OpenAI ingested it. The government funded the infrastructure that processed it, and none of them are telling you where it went.